The Cartier box sat on our bedroom dresser like a small monument to lies. Aria held the necklace up to the lamplight, the diamonds catching fire against her pale throat. Her fingers trembled as she fastened the clasp. Such a small detail, but I notice everything. 20 years as a forensic accountant teaches you to spot the inconsistencies. "It's beautiful," I said from the doorway, loosening my tie. "Quarterly bonuses must be generous this year." She turned toward the mirror, avoiding my eyes. Miles has been really pleased with my work on the Henderson merger. Miles Herron, her boss. The Golden Boy CEO who drove a vintage Porsche and lived in the kind of house that appeared in architectural magazines. I'd met him exactly twice, once at the company Christmas party where he barely acknowledged my existence, and once at a charity auction where he bid $30,000 on a weekend in Napa just to show off. "Funny," I continued, hanging my jacket in the closet. "Most companies give bonuses in cash, or maybe a nice pen set." Aria's laugh sounded forced. "You know how these corporate types are, always trying to make an impression." I walked closer, studying the necklace. The pendant was exquisite, a teardrop of diamonds surrounding a central stone that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Must have been quite the impression you made." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just admiring your boss's generosity." She finally met my eyes in the mirror. "You're being weird, Evan." "Am I? Sorry. Long day auditing expense reports makes me suspicious of unexpected gifts." Aria turned away from the mirror and walked to the bathroom. "I'm taking a shower." The door closed with more force than necessary. I heard the lock click, another small detail. In 18 years of marriage, Aria had never locked the bathroom door. Not once. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the empty Cartier box. The velvet interior still held the impression of the necklace, like a crime scene outline. The receipt would be somewhere. People always keep receipts for expensive things, even when they shouldn't. Her purse sat on the nightstand, a sleek leather Prada bag that cost more than my first car. I'd bought it for her last Christmas, back when I thought expensive gifts meant something. The shower was running. Aria always took long showers, especially when she was stressed. I had maybe 15 minutes. I opened the purse carefully, methodically. Wallet, keys, phone charger, breath mints, lipstick in a shade called Dangerous Liaison. How fitting. Then my fingers found the silk-lined interior pocket she used for important papers. The receipt was folded once, creased down the middle. Cartier, Beverly Hills. Date, 3 days ago. Time, 2:47 p.m. Total, $14,147.83. Payment method, American Express Black Card. Cardholder, Miles J. Herron. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. $14,000 for a necklace, given to my wife, by her boss. The shower was still running, but I could hear Aria humming, some song I didn't recognize. She sounded happy. I took a photo of the receipt with my phone, then carefully folded it back exactly as I'd found it. Everything returned to its proper place in her purse. No evidence of my investigation, but now I had evidence of hers. I walked to my home office and powered up my laptop. The blue glow illuminated stacks of financial documents and case files. This was my domain, the place where I unraveled other people's lies for a living. Corporate fraud, embezzlement, hidden assets. I'd seen every trick, every scheme, every creative way people tried to hide money trails. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd never audited my own marriage. I opened a new file on my computer and titled it Personal Investigation. Then I uploaded the photo of the receipt and began to type. Miles Herron. Age, 44. CEO of Herron Industries, a mid-sized consulting firm that specialized in corporate acquisitions. Married to Nora Herron, daughter of the Blackstone family. Old money, older connections. 2 children, Rebecca, 22, and James, 19. Rebecca was getting married in 3 months to some hedge fund prince. The wedding had been featured in the society pages as the event of the season. I'd learned all this from Aria's casual mentions over the past year. She'd started talking about Miles more frequently, dropping his name into conversations about work with increasing regularity. I'd assumed she was just impressed by his success, maybe a little starstruck by working so closely with someone so wealthy and powerful. Now I wondered what else I'd assumed incorrectly. The shower stopped. I minimized the file and pulled up a legitimate case, a restaurant chain suspected of skimming cash receipts. Numbers and spreadsheets filled the screen, the comfortable camouflage of my profession. Aria emerged from the bathroom wrapped in her silk robe, her dark hair damp against her shoulders. She looked younger somehow, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Working late again?" she asked, settling into bed with a magazine. "Just finishing up some calculations. You know how it is." She flipped through pages without really looking at them. "I might be late tomorrow night. Miles wants me to attend the Whitmore Industries dinner. Networking opportunity. On a Thursday? Business doesn't follow a schedule, honey. You know that." I turned back to my computer screen, but the numbers swam before my eyes. Thursday nights. How many Thursday nights had she worked late recently? How many networking dinners and client meetings and urgent projects that couldn't wait until morning? "Will you be home for dinner Friday?" I asked. "Should be, unless something comes up." Something, or someone. I worked until Aria's breathing became deep and regular. Then I opened my personal investigation file again and began to dig deeper. Corporate records, social media profiles, news articles about Heron Industries. Miles Heron smiled at me from a dozen photos, ribbon cuttings, charity galas, business award ceremonies. In several pictures, he stood next to his wife, Nora, a striking woman with silver hair and the kind of bone structure that suggested generations of good breeding. In one photo from last month's United Way fundraiser, I spotted Aria in the background. She was looking at Miles with an expression I recognized but couldn't immediately place. Then it hit me. It was the same way she used to look at me, back when we were dating, back when I thought I was the center of her universe. I saved the photo to my file and continued searching. By 3 a.m., I had assembled a comprehensive profile of Miles Heron's public life. But public lives were just the surface. The real secrets lived in the details: credit card statements, phone records, hotel bookings, the digital breadcrumbs that people left behind without thinking. Getting access to those details would require more sophisticated methods. Fortunately, I had sophisticated methods. During my early years at the Treasury Department, before I moved into private forensic accounting, I'd learned certain skills that weren't exactly advertised on my resume. Computer forensics, data recovery, digital surveillance techniques, all perfectly legal when applied to corporate investigations with proper warrants and authorizations. What I was contemplating now existed in a grayer area. I looked at my sleeping wife, her face peaceful in the dim light from my computer screen. She was still beautiful at 38, still the woman who'd caught my attention at a coffee shop near Georgetown 20 years ago. She'd been reading Sylvia Plath and drinking tea with too much honey, and when she smiled at my clumsy attempt at conversation, I'd known my life was about to change. Maybe it was changing again. I closed the laptop and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that receipt. $14,000. The price of a decent used car, the cost of a family vacation to Europe, the value of 6 months of groceries, or one necklace for another man's mistress. The next morning, Aria left early for a breakfast meeting. She kissed my cheek absently, her mind already elsewhere, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume I didn't recognize. "New fragrance?" I asked. "Oh yes, Chanel something. I picked it up yesterday during lunch." Another purchase I hadn't seen a receipt for. I was beginning to understand that my wife had developed an entirely separate financial ecosystem, one that operated outside our joint accounts and shared budget. After her car disappeared down our tree-lined street, I returned to my office and began the real work. Aria's laptop sat on the kitchen counter where she always left it. She'd given me the password years ago, our wedding anniversary in reverse, and had never bothered to change it. Why would she? We were married. We trusted each other. Trust. Such a fragile thing, built over decades and shattered in moments. I carried her laptop to my office and connected it to my external hard drive. The data recovery software I'd acquired through professional channels began its methodical examination of her digital life. Deleted files, browser history, cached images, email fragments. Nothing truly disappeared from a computer, not if you knew where to look. While the software worked, I turned to her phone records. Our family plan made accessing her call logs simple enough. I pulled up the last 6 months and began looking for patterns. There. Thursday afternoons, calls to the same number lasting 15 to 20 minutes. The number wasn't saved in her contacts, but a reverse lookup identified it as the Grandview Hotel downtown, an upscale establishment that catered to business travelers and discreet encounters. I called the hotel's main number. Grandview Hotel, this is Jennifer. How may I help you? Hi, I'm trying to reach my wife. She mentioned she might be attending a business meeting in one of your conference rooms. This would be most Thursday afternoons. I'm sorry, sir, but I can't provide information about our guests or events. Of course, I understand. Maybe you could just confirm if there are regular business meetings on Thursdays? I'm trying to coordinate my schedule. A pause. Sir, we don't typically host recurring business meetings. Our conference facilities are usually booked for specific events or private functions. Private functions. How delicately put. Thank you for your time. I hung up and returned to Aria's laptop. The recovery software had finished its scan, presenting me with a digital archaeological dig of my wife's secret life. The deleted text messages told the story in fragments. Can't wait for Thursday. Thinking about you. Last night was incredible. You make me feel alive again. He is working late again. Sometimes I think he loves those spreadsheets more than me. The necklace is perfect. You have exquisite taste in everything. The messages were exchanged with a contact listed only as M. I didn't need a forensic degree to solve that mystery, but the real revelation came in the deleted photo gallery. Images Aria had taken and then removed from her phone, probably thinking they were gone forever. Pictures of hotel room interiors, wine glasses and rumpled sheets, a man's hand wearing an expensive watch, a Patek Philippe that retailed for more than most people's annual salary. And then the image that made my chest tighten, Aria wearing the Cartier necklace and nothing else, smiling at the camera with an expression of pure joy I hadn't seen directed at me in years. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and completely devastating. My wife of 18 years was having an affair with her boss, a cliché so predictable it would be laughable if it weren't happening to me. But clichés became clichés because they reflected common human weaknesses. Greed, lust, the desire for something better than what you had. Aria had found something she thought was better, and she'd been willing to lie, cheat, and betray our marriage to get it. The question now was what I intended to do about it. I could confront her directly, demand an explanation, insist on marriage counseling. The mature, reasonable approach. We could work through this like civilized adults, maybe salvage something from the wreckage of our relationship. Or I could do what I did best, follow the money and expose the truth. I opened a new browser window and navigated to the website for Heron Industries. The company's leadership page featured a photo of Miles with his arm around Nora at some corporate function. They looked happy, successful, completely unaware that their carefully constructed life was built on the same foundation of lies as mine. I found Nora's contact information through the charity boards she served on. The Blackstone Family Foundation, the Metropolitan Arts Council, the Children's Hospital Development Committee. A woman of means and influence, someone accustomed to getting results when she applied pressure. Someone who probably wouldn't appreciate learning that her husband was spending $14,000 on jewelry for his subordinate. I composed an email from a temporary account I created through an anonymous server. Nothing threatening or inflammatory, just a simple message with photographic attachments. Mrs. Heron, I thought you should be aware of some concerning financial irregularities involving your husband's corporate credit card. Please see attached documentation. A concerned citizen. I attached the receipt photo, several of the recovered text messages, and one of the hotel room images. Nothing explicit, just enough to establish the context. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I pressed it, there would be no going back. I would be actively destroying not just my own marriage, but someone else's as well. 2 families would be shattered, careers would be ruined, children would learn uncomfortable truths about their parents. But then I thought about Aria's trembling fingers as she fastened that necklace. The lies came so easily to her now, as natural as breathing. How long had this been going on? How many other bonuses and networking events and late meetings had I accepted without question? I pressed send. The email disappeared into the digital ether, carrying its payload of evidence toward Nora Heron's inbox. Within hours, maybe minutes, she would know what her husband had been doing with his Thursday afternoons. I deleted the temporary email account and cleared my browser history. Then I returned Aria's laptop to its place in the kitchen and went to work on my legitimate cases, trying to lose myself in other people's financial crimes while I waited for the consequences of my own actions to unfold. But concentration was impossible. Every few minutes I found myself checking my phone, waiting for some sign that my message had been received and processed. Would Nora confront Miles immediately? Would she hire a private investigator to gather more evidence? Would she call Aria directly? At noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Aria. Lunch meeting running long. Might be late tonight too, don't wait up. I stared at the message, wondering if she was actually at a business lunch, or if she was with Miles, planning their next rendezvous, completely unaware that their secret was about to become very public knowledge. No problem, I texted back. I'll probably work late myself. It wasn't a lie. I had work to do, the kind of work that would require careful planning and meticulous execution. The kind of work I'd been trained for, even if I'd never imagined applying those skills to my own life. I was going to audit my marriage with the same thoroughness I brought to corporate fraud cases. Every lie would be documented, every deception exposed, every hidden asset uncovered. And when I was finished, Aria and Miles would understand the true cost of their Thursday afternoon bonuses. The call came at 2:47 p.m., exactly 24 hours after Miles had purchased my wife's necklace. My phone displayed an unknown number, but when I answered, the voice was crisp, educated, and furious. Is this Evan Mercer? Yes, who's calling? This is Nora Heron. I believe you sent me some interesting photographs yesterday. I set down my pen and closed the case file I'd been pretending to review. Mrs. Heron, I wasn't sure you'd received my message. Oh, I received it, along with several very enlightening attachments. I think we should meet. I'm not sure that's... Mr. Mercer, your wife is having an affair with my husband. They've been using his corporate credit card to fund their little romance, and according to your evidence, this has been going on for quite some time. Now, we can handle this like civilized adults, or I can make things very unpleasant for everyone involved. Which would you prefer? Her tone was ice-cold and completely controlled. This was a woman accustomed to wielding power, someone who'd learned to turn personal betrayal into strategic advantage. Where did you have in mind? The Grandview Hotel lobby, 4 o'clock. I assume you know where that is. The line went quiet. I sat in my office, surrounded by the familiar chaos of financial documents and case files, and realized that my carefully ordered world was about to become very complicated. At 3:45, I drove downtown to the Grandview Hotel. The building was a monument to understated luxury, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of hushed atmosphere that came with expensive taste and discretionary income. I'd never been inside before, though apparently my wife was quite familiar with the accommodations. Nora Harron sat in a corner of the lobby, elegant and composed in a way that suggested old money and older breeding. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with silver-streaked blonde hair and the kind of bone structure that aged gracefully. When she looked up from her phone, her eyes were the pale blue of winter sky. "Mr. Mercer," she gestured to the chair across from her. "Thank you for coming." I sat down, suddenly aware that my off-the-rack suit and department store tie marked me as someone from a different economic stratum. "Mrs. Harron." "Nora, please. Given the circumstances, I think we can dispense with formalities." She signaled a waiter, who appeared instantly with the kind of attentiveness that expensive hotels provided. "Coffee? Something stronger?" "Coffee's fine." She ordered for both of us, then leaned back in her chair and studied me with the same intensity I might apply to a suspect financial statement. "You're not what I expected," she said finally. "What did you expect?" "Someone angry, threatening. Most men who discover their wives are cheating tend toward dramatic gestures." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You, on the other hand, conducted a forensic investigation and presented your findings with professional detachment. That's either very mature or very calculating." "Maybe both." The coffee arrived in delicate china cups that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Nora added cream with precise movements, her wedding ring catching the light from the chandelier overhead. "I've been married to Miles for 22 years, she said without preamble. "I've overlooked his previous indiscretions because they were brief, meaningless, and conducted with appropriate discretion. This situation is different." "How so?" "The money, for one thing. $14,000 for a necklace suggests an emotional investment that goes beyond physical attraction. The duration, for another, 18 months is practically a relationship." She sipped her coffee delicately. "And then there's the location." "The location?" "This hotel, Mr. Mercer. Do you know who owns it?" I shook my head. "The Blackstone Family Trust. My family's trust. Miles has been conducting his affair with your wife in a hotel that I effectively own." Her smile turned predatory. "That shows either remarkable stupidity or remarkable arrogance, possibly both." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hotel's air conditioning. "What do you want from me?" "Cooperation. I'm going to destroy my husband's career and reputation, and I'd prefer to do it systematically rather than impulsively. Your wife is collateral damage, of course, but I assume that's acceptable to you." "What did you have in mind?" Nora reached into her purse and withdrew a tablet. She swiped through several screens, then turned it toward me. "Miles sits on the board of directors for 3 companies, serves as a trustee for 2 charitable foundations, and holds membership in 4 exclusive clubs. All of those positions depend on his reputation for integrity and sound judgment." The screen showed a comprehensive dossier: corporate affiliations, social connections, financial holdings. Someone had done their homework. "I've already contacted my attorney about divorce proceedings," she continued. "But a simple divorce would be too easy. Miles needs to understand the full consequences of his choices." "You want to ruin him." "I want him to experience the same sense of betrayal and humiliation that I felt when I opened your email yesterday." Her voice remained perfectly calm, but I caught a flicker of genuine anger in her eyes. 22 years of marriage, Mr. Mercer, 2 children who worship their father, a social circle that will whisper about this for decades. Yes, I want to ruin him. I thought about Aria's lies, her casual deceptions, the way she'd looked at me with pity when I'd questioned her about the necklace. "What do you need from me?" "More evidence. Phone records, financial statements, hotel registrations, anything that establishes a pattern of deception. I assume you have access to your wife's personal information." "Some of it. Get the rest. I want a complete timeline of their relationship, every gift, every meeting, every lie they told to cover their tracks." She finished her coffee and signaled for the check. How long do you think that will take? A few days. Maybe a week if I'm thorough. Be thorough. I'll contact you when I have everything arranged on my end. She stood, leaving a $20 tip for coffee that probably cost $8. Oh, and Mr. Mercer? You might want to consult with a divorce attorney yourself. I suspect you'll be needing one soon. She walked away without looking back, her heels clicking against the marble floor with military precision. I sat alone in the hotel lobby, surrounded by luxury I couldn't afford and planning the systematic destruction of 2 marriages. My phone buzzed with a text from Aria. Working late again. Order takeout for dinner. I typed back, no problem, take your time. Then I drove home to begin the most important audit of my career. Aria came home at 11:30 p.m., her cheeks flushed and her hair slightly mussed despite obvious attempts to repair the damage. She found me in the kitchen eating leftover Chinese food and reading case files. Sorry I'm so late, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. The Whitmore deal is more complicated than we thought. No worries. How was dinner? Dinner? You said you were working late. I assumed that meant dinner at the office or maybe with clients. She hesitated for just a moment, a tiny pause that confirmed everything I already knew. Oh, yes, we grabbed something quick, nothing fancy. I nodded and returned to my files. There's leftover lo mein in the refrigerator if you're still hungry. I'm fine, just tired. She kissed the top of my head, a gesture that felt more like habit than affection. Don't stay up too late. I waited until I heard the shower running upstairs, then opened my laptop and continued building the case against my marriage. The previous 3 days had been productive. I'd recovered 6 months of deleted text messages, cross-referenced credit card statements with hotel bookings, and established a clear pattern of Thursday afternoon meetings that coincided with mysterious client dinners and late meetings. But the real breakthrough had come from an unexpected source, Aria's fitness tracker. She'd bought the device 6 months ago as part of a New Year's resolution to exercise more. Like most such resolutions, her enthusiasm had waned quickly, but she still wore the tracker out of habit. What she didn't realize was that the device logged her location data with GPS precision, creating a digital map of everywhere she'd been, including the Grandview Hotel, every Thursday for the past 18 weeks. I'd also discovered that Miles had been more generous than just the necklace. There were charges for expensive dinners, weekend trips to wine country, even a spa day that cost more than I spent on groceries in a month, all charged to various corporate accounts, all carefully disguised as business expenses. The pattern was clear, documented, and completely damning. My phone buzzed with a message from Nora. Status update? I typed back, ready to meet, substantial new evidence. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., my attorney's office. Address attached. The law firm of Blackstone, Morrison & Associates occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise that screamed old money and older connections. The reception area featured museum-quality artwork and furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. Nora was waiting in a conference room with 2 men in expensive suits. She introduced them as her divorce attorney and a private investigator who specialized in corporate fraud. Mr. Mercer, she said, please show them what you found. I opened my laptop and projected the evidence onto a large screen. The timeline was comprehensive and devastating. 18 months of systematic deception, documented with text messages, credit card statements, location data, and hotel records. The private investigator whistled softly. This is better than anything I could have gathered. How did you get access to the corporate credit card statements? I have contacts in the financial industry, people who owe me favors from previous cases. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did have contacts, though I'd used more creative methods to access Miles's financial records. Nora's attorney was taking notes. This establishes clear evidence of marital misconduct and misuse of corporate funds. Mrs. Heron, with this documentation, we can pursue both divorce proceedings and potential criminal charges. Criminal charges? I asked. Using corporate funds for personal expenses is embezzlement, Mr. Mercer. The amounts involved here could constitute felony charges. He flipped through the printed evidence. Of course, that would depend on whether the company's board of directors chooses to prosecute. Nora smiled. I think I can influence their decision. The meeting continued for another hour, with the attorneys discussing legal strategies and the investigator explaining how he would present the evidence to various corporate boards and social organizations. By the time we finished, Miles Heron's professional and personal destruction had been planned with military precision. As I gathered my materials, Nora pulled me aside. "What about your wife?" she asked. "What about her? Are you planning to confront her before this becomes public?" I considered the question. Part of me wanted to see Aria's face when she realized her secret was exposed. Part of me wanted to give her a chance to explain, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness she didn't deserve. But mostly, I wanted her to experience the same shock and humiliation I'd felt when I found that receipt. "No," I said finally. "Let her find out with everyone else." Nora nodded approvingly. "Good. Surprise is a powerful weapon." I drove home through afternoon traffic, thinking about weapons and surprises and the careful application of professional skills to personal revenge. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I felt calmer than I had in weeks. Aria's car was already there, which was unusual for a Thursday. I found her in the kitchen, pacing and talking rapidly into her phone. "I don't care what the board says," she was saying. "This is completely unfair. We've done nothing wrong." She looked up when I entered, her face pale and strained. "I have to go," she said into the phone. "We'll talk later." "Everything okay?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. "There's been some kind of misunderstanding at work. False accusations about improper conduct." She sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "Someone's been spreading lies about Miles and me." "What kind of lies?" "Ridiculous things, suggesting that that there's something inappropriate about our working relationship." Her voice cracked slightly. "Miles thinks it might be corporate espionage, a competitor trying to damage the company's reputation." I poured myself a glass of water and sat across from her. "That sounds serious." "It is serious. Miles has been suspended pending an investigation. I might be next." She looked at me with desperate eyes. "Evan, you have to believe me. There's nothing between Miles and me except work. These accusations are completely false." I studied my wife's face, noting the way her left eye twitched when she lied, the slight tremor in her voice when she was scared. After 18 years of marriage, I could read her tells like a poker player. "Of course I believe you," I said gently. "Why would anyone make up stories like that?" Relief flooded her features. "Thank you. I was so worried you might think, that you might believe the lies." "Never," I assured her. "We're married. We trust each other." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I love you, Evan. Whatever happens with this mess at work, I want you to know that." "I love you too," I replied, and was surprised to discover that it was still partially true. Even after everything she'd done, everything she'd lied about, some part of me still loved the woman I'd married 20 years ago. The problem was, that woman no longer existed, if she ever had. The woman sitting across from me was a stranger wearing my wife's face, and tomorrow she would discover just how much her lies had cost her. The story broke in the business section of Friday's newspaper, buried on page 6, between an article about municipal bonds and an advertisement for investment services. The headline was deliberately understated: "Local CEO suspended amid financial irregularities." But for those who knew where to look, the details were devastating. Miles Heron had been placed on indefinite administrative leave while the board of directors investigated allegations of misusing corporate funds for personal expenses. The article mentioned substantial evidence of inappropriate charges to company credit cards, including luxury hotel stays and expensive gifts. Aria read the article 3 times over breakfast, her coffee growing cold as she absorbed the implications. "This is worse than I thought," she murmured. "If they're involving the board of directors—" "Maybe it's not as bad as it sounds," I suggested, buttering my toast with careful precision. "These corporate investigations can drag on for months. Sometimes the initial allegations turn out to be overblown." She looked at me with something approaching hope. "You really think so?" "I've seen it before. Companies overreact to protect themselves legally, then quietly resolve things once the lawyers get involved. It wasn't entirely a lie. Companies did sometimes overreact to financial irregularities. The difference was that in this case, the evidence was overwhelming, and the accuser had both unlimited resources and a personal vendetta. My phone buzzed with a text message. "Phase 2 begins today. N." I deleted the message and focused on my breakfast, trying to project an image of calm normalcy while my wife's world began to collapse around her. At 10:30 a.m., Aria called me from work. "They want to see me in HR," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "This can't be good." "Just tell the truth," I advised. "If you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about." "Right, nothing to worry about." She didn't sound convinced. The call ended, and I returned to my case files, though concentration was difficult. Every few minutes, I found myself checking my phone, waiting for updates on a situation I'd orchestrated but couldn't control. At 11:45, another call. "They've suspended me too," Aria said, and now she was crying. "Pending investigation. They wouldn't tell me what evidence they have, but they made it sound like they think Miles and I have been what? Having an affair." The words came out in a whisper. "They think we've been having an affair and using company money to pay for it." "That's ridiculous," I said, injecting just the right amount of outrage into my voice. "Why would they think that?" "I don't know. Someone gave them photos, financial records, text messages. They wouldn't show me everything, but they had enough to make me sign a non-disclosure agreement before they'd let me leave the building. Photos, text messages, financial records. Nora and her team had been thorough. "Come home," I said. "We'll figure this out together." But when Aria arrived an hour later, she wasn't alone. Miles Heron sat in the passenger seat of her car, looking haggard and desperate. They talked for several minutes in the driveway before he drove away in his Porsche, leaving my wife to face me alone. "Miles wanted to explain the situation," she said as she entered the house. "He's as confused as I am about where these accusations are coming from." "What did he say?" "That someone's been investigating us, gathering evidence of something that doesn't exist. He thinks it might be connected to the Whitmore acquisition. Maybe someone who lost money when that deal went through." I nodded sympathetically. Corporate revenge can get ugly. The worst part is, even if we prove our innocence, the damage is already done. Miles's reputation is ruined, and mine probably is too. She slumped onto the couch, still wearing the business suit she'd put on that morning with such optimism. 20 years of building my career, and it could all be gone because of some lie. I sat beside her and took her hand. "Maybe this is an opportunity." "An opportunity?" "To start fresh. Try something new. You've always talked about opening your own consulting firm." She looked at me with surprise. "You'd support that?" "Of course. We're a team, remember? We'll get through this together." For a moment, her facade cracked, and I saw genuine gratitude in her eyes. It almost made me feel guilty about what was coming next. Almost. My phone rang at 3:17 p.m. The caller ID showed Nora's number. "Excuse me," I told Aria. "Work call." I stepped outside to answer. "Turn on channel 7, Nora said without preamble. The 5 o'clock news is going to be very interesting. What did you do? Nothing illegal. I simply provided some photographs to a journalist friend who specializes in local business stories. Amazing what people will do with properly motivated sources. I returned to the house, where Aria was channel surfing listlessly. Anything good on? I asked. Just the usual afternoon talk shows. She handed me the remote. I'm going to take a bath. This whole day feels surreal. I waited until I heard the bathroom door close, then turned to Channel 7 and settled in to wait. The story led the 5 o'clock broadcast. Good evening. Tonight, an exclusive investigation into allegations of corporate misconduct and personal impropriety involving a prominent local businessman and his employee. The anchor's voice was professionally neutral, but the graphics behind her told a different story. Photos of Miles and Aria entering the Grandview Hotel. Credit card statements showing expensive purchases. Text message exchanges that left little doubt about the nature of their relationship. The reporter had done his homework, presenting the evidence with the kind of clinical precision that made denial impossible. Corporate executives issued carefully worded statements about ongoing investigations. Hotel management declined to comment on specific guests. Even Aria's former colleagues were quoted anonymously, expressing shock and disappointment. By the time the segment ended, my wife's affair was public knowledge throughout the metropolitan area. I turned off the television and sat in the sudden silence, listening to the sound of running water from upstairs. In a few minutes, Aria would emerge from her bath, probably expecting comfort and reassurance from her loyal husband. Instead, she would discover that her secret was now the evening's entertainment for 500,000 viewers. I poured myself a scotch and waited for the screaming to begin. The scream came at 5:43 p.m., exactly 6 minutes after Aria's phone started buzzing with calls from friends, family members, and former colleagues who'd seen the news. I found her in the bedroom, wrapped in her bathrobe, staring at her phone with the expression of someone who'd just witnessed a fatal accident. "Evan," she whispered. Someone leaked everything to the media. The hotel photos, the text messages, even the credit card statements. I sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining careful distance. I saw the news report. This is bad. Bad? She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. My mother just called. She saw it on television. My mother, Evan. She knows everything. What did you tell her? What could I tell her? That it's all lies? That someone fabricated months of evidence just to destroy my reputation? She threw the phone across the room, where it hit the wall and clattered to the floor. Nobody's going to believe that. I retrieved her phone and checked the screen for damage. Maybe you should call Miles. Coordinate your response. I can't reach Miles. His phone goes straight to voicemail. She stood and began pacing, her movements sharp and agitated. This is a nightmare. 24 hours ago, everything was fine. Now my career is over, my reputation is destroyed, and my marriage is probably next. Why would your marriage be next? She stopped pacing and looked at me with desperate eyes. Because you're going to ask me if it's true, if the allegations are accurate, and I'm going to have to decide whether to keep lying or tell you the truth. The moment stretched between us, heavy with 18 years of shared history and the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. Okay, I said quietly. Is it true? Aria closed her eyes and took a shuddering breath. Yes. The word hung in the air like smoke, simple, devastating, final. How long? I asked. 18 months. It started at the company retreat in Napa. We'd both been drinking, and Miles was having problems with Nora, and I was feeling neglected because you work so much. She opened her eyes and looked at me pleadingly. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was just supposed to be one night. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't. She sat down beside me, careful not to touch. I tried to end it a dozen times, But Miles kept saying he was going to leave Nora, and the way he made me feel, I haven't felt that way in years, Evan. Desired, appreciated, like I was the most important thing in someone's world. I thought about the deleted photos, the expensive gifts, the careful planning that had gone into their Thursday afternoon meetings. The necklace was from him. Yes. And the perfume, and probably half the clothes in your closet. She nodded miserably. He said he wanted to spoil me, that I deserved beautiful things. Did you love him? The question surprised her. I thought I did. Maybe I still do. I don't know anymore. She finally looked directly at me. Do you hate me? I considered the question seriously. Hate was too simple an emotion for what I felt. There was anger, certainly, and disappointment, and a deep sense of betrayal. But underneath it all was something more complex, a kind of professional satisfaction at having solved the puzzle correctly. I'm disappointed, I said finally, but not surprised. Not surprised? Aria, you've been lying to me for 18 months. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? She stared at me with growing confusion. What do you mean? I stood and walked to my dresser, where I'd hidden a manila folder containing copies of all the evidence I'd gathered. I handed it to her without comment. She opened the folder and began reading. Her face went through a series of expressions, confusion, recognition, and finally, horrified understanding. You knew, she whispered. You've known all along. I found the receipt for the necklace 3 days ago. Everything else came after that. You investigated me. You spied on your own wife. I audited my marriage the same way I audit corporate finances. When I find irregularities, I investigate them. She flipped through pages of evidence, credit card statements, text message transcripts, location data from her fitness tracker. How long have you been gathering this? Since Tuesday. Tuesday? She looked up sharply. But the news story, the corporate investigation, that all started yesterday. I met her eyes steadily. Yes, it did. The realization hit her like a physical blow. You did this. You're the one who exposed us. I forwarded some information to interested parties. Interested parties. Her voice was rising. You destroyed my career. You ruined Miles's life. You turned our private business into a public scandal. I documented the truth and shared it with people who had a right to know. She stood abruptly, the folder scattering papers across the floor. How could you do this to me? I'm your wife. You stopped being my wife when you started lying to me every day for 18 months. So you decided to destroy my life instead of talking to me about it? I looked at the woman I'd married, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in years. What would you have said if I'd confronted you? Would you have told the truth? Would you have ended the affair? Or would you have lied more skillfully and been more careful about covering your tracks? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. We both knew the answer. I want you out of this house, she said finally. Actually, you're the one who's leaving. I handed her another document from the dresser, a copy of our prenuptial agreement, with the infidelity clause highlighted in yellow. You insisted on this clause, I reminded her. You said it would protect both of us from gold diggers and cheating spouses. Funny how that worked out. Aria read the document with growing horror. You can't be serious. I've already spoken with my attorney. You have 30 days to find alternative housing. The house, the cars, and most of our joint assets remain with me, as specified in the agreement you signed. Evan, please, we can work through this. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever you want. Just don't do this. I looked at her tear-streaked face and felt nothing but a distant kind of pity. The time for working through things was before you decided to have an 18-month affair with your boss. I made a mistake. You made 18 months of conscious choices. Every lie, every hotel meeting, every expensive gift you accepted, those were all choices. She sank onto the bed, defeated. What about Miles? What about him? The news said there might be criminal charges, embezzlement. If he goes to prison, that's between Miles and the justice system, and his wife's attorneys. His wife? Aria looked up sharply. You talked to his wife? Nora and I have been coordinating our response to this situation. Coordinating your response? She laughed bitterly. You mean coordinating your revenge? I mean ensuring that the people responsible for this situation face appropriate consequences for their actions. Aria stared at me as if I were a stranger. I don't know who you are anymore. I'm the same person I've always been. You just never bothered to pay attention. I left her sitting on the bed, surrounded by scattered evidence of her betrayal, and went downstairs to pour another scotch. Outside, the sun was setting over our quiet suburban street, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Nora. Saw the news coverage, excellent work. I typed back, thank you for your cooperation. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate our mutual success? I considered the invitation. Nora Herron was an attractive woman, intelligent and sophisticated, with resources that matched her ambitions. Under different circumstances, I might have been interested. But these weren't different circumstances. These were the circumstances where I'd just destroyed my marriage and helped orchestrate the public humiliation of two people who thought they were smarter than everyone around them. Rain check, I replied. I have some cleaning up to do. I deleted the message thread and finished my scotch, listening to the sound of Aria packing upstairs. Tomorrow I would begin the process of rebuilding my life from the wreckage of my marriage. Tonight, I was content to sit in my empty house and savor the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The necklace sat on the kitchen counter where Aria had left it, the diamonds catching the last rays of sunlight through the window. $14,000 worth of guilt and deception, reduced to nothing more than expensive evidence of poor judgment. I picked up the necklace and held it to the light, watching the stones fracture the sunset into 1,000 tiny rainbows. Beautiful, expensive, and ultimately worthless, just like the marriage it had helped destroy. Tomorrow, I would return it to Cartier and use the refund to pay my divorce attorney's retainer. Tonight, it served as a perfect reminder that some bonuses cost more than anyone should be willing to pay.